Question to Ms. Willis then. Ms. Willis, I'm on the subject of parent triggers and drawn upon the example of the Druid Hills Charter Cluster, where the parents unsuccessfully lobbied to convert 7 DeKalb County public schools to charters, which included the #1 elementary school in the county. I'm wondering if you're of the opinion that the parent trigger option should be tied to school performance, and what is your opinion on this particular charter cluster, which would be the first charter cluster in the state, and would represent the transfer of $40 million in budget funds to the control of a private, unelected board?
Ooh, okay, let's start with the fact that I am a firm believer in educational freedom, and I don't think that there should be too much of that. I don't think there is too much a thing as educational freedom. And when I talk about that, I'm talking actually about public school choice. I'm not talking about private vouchers. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about inter-county school choice and intra-county school choice. And I don't know how much time I have, so buckle in, y'all. I'm gonna go, okay, I'm good. So when we're talking about inter-county school choice, and this has been proven to actually work in other states, you're looking at larger counties. You're saying Johnny can go to any school in the county that fits his or her, that fits his passion. Because as public schools, we can't be jacks of all trades. We can't have automotive shop in our CTA. We can't have a culinary school. We can't have everything that CTA warrants and for our children. So what we can do then is open up public school choice for our kids, and that's inter-county school choice. All right, and then we've got intra-county school choice, which benefits our smaller counties. And that means that our smaller counties then sort of band together. And my husband did this actually back in the 80s in Alabama. Y'all heard me right, Alabama. And his principal, a very forward-thinking man in the 1980s, said, I got this group of really smart people, and what I'm going to do is, and he tracked them, and said, we're gonna get these young people, because they have a class of 30 children. We can't offer AP Physics and AP Chemistry and AP Lang. So we're gonna get all these different schools from around that are also high achieving. We're gonna bus them to a community college in Chattanooga, and we're gonna let these children follow their passion and their promise so that they can move on in their lives and move on educationally. So I didn't get to finish with
that. Abby?
My question is for Mr. Woods. In light of the new Georgia gun law, which allows school boards in Georgia to authorize teachers, principals, and other staffers to be armed on school grounds beginning in July, what is your position on allowing more guns into Georgia public schools? I
think that, when you're looking at the concerns that we have for school safety, again, being a former administrator, personally, I would want to do anything that would protect my child or the children and our staff members, and would be willing to do that. But that being said, this is an issue that is best addressed at the local level. Your school board, your community working together, you need to decide, if this is something that you want. It's not something that the state needs to come in, especially the state school superintendent, say that we have to have guns or X number of guns within a school system or within a school. That's would be inappropriate. But also, when you look at that as well, when you're looking at making that move, you have to make sure you have the proper training as well. I mean, that is something that is you have to be very, very careful with. Because just to say you have a gun in a school does not necessarily make you safe. I think I kind of look back at the old show, Andy Griffin. Barney Fife had a pistol, okay, but I necessarily didn't make me feel safe. If I was walking down Mayberry, and so those are things that you have to look at. But that's stuff that you have to look at across the board at the local level. It is something I think that we have to have as far as a choice with that. Again, for myself, if it meant protecting my children, if it meant protecting my staff, I would not hesitate to do that. But also, I want to make sure that I have training with that. Because one of the things we find out across the board, and for teachers as well, a lot of times we get new equipment that just magically appears in the school, but we don't have the training to back it up. And instead of being proficient with it, we become very incompetent. So, you know, two things, make sure, you know, leave it at the local level as far as addressing that, but also make sure that you have the proper training that goes with it, because, like I said, guns are not toys. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to get to your opening statement, but I want to get closure on this first round, and then you'll go next. There were 4 questions asked. One of them was about teak. I'm not sure everyone knows what teak is in the audience. You might want to, but we had a question about teak, a question about lottery funding, we had a question about guns, and we had a question about
Parent trigger laws.
parent, yeah, or choice. We had a choice question, a contribution of the income, or funding disparity based on income, guns in schools, and teach. Those were the 4 questions. And so, to those of you that didn't respond to a question, let's just take a few minutes if any of you want to respond to any of those 4 questions that came up.
I'd like to respond to the one on guns.
Okay.
I like the other one too, but I'm going to do the guns. As a former classroom teacher and as a former school board member, I can't fathom, I can't even imagine staff coming to school like the Wild Wild West. I can't imagine having teachers with the responsibility of carrying guns into a school building. In lieu of what just happened in Augusta, Georgia at Payne College with the shooting there, it's really frightening to think that we want our administrators and our teachers to bring guns to school. That gives our students, think about this, what if a student has a desire to cause harm and they take the gun away from the teacher and it wreaks havoc? That's why we can write grants. In my county, we wrote grants that we could have resource, which was local police officers and sheriff deputies who were off duty. They worked at our school. These are law enforcement agency personnel who knows gun safety. They know how to subdue somebody in a crisis situation. And they don't have to be trained. They've been trained. And they have to be certified to be police officers. They have to be certified to be sheriff deputies. So I think we need to continue to find funding, especially in rural areas. Most large systems like Augusta, Richmond County, they have their own school police department. So a lot of school systems have their own, but for the rural ones, the smaller ones that don't, we need to make sure that they have funding so that they can hire off-duty officers. Thank you.
Denise. Any other, yes?
I currently teach at Druid Hills High School, and so I was part of the movement for Druid Hills to become a charter district. I also briefly served on the committee. It is my understanding that DeKalb County is in the process of becoming a charter district, and also that Druid Hills is about to apply for their charter district again. Georgia is set up now where school districts will either have to become investing in educational excellence, i.e. squared, or become a charter district in order to receive waivers in the form of reducing classroom sizes, and in order for school districts to get additional federal funding instead of funding that would normally come from the state. I am a public school teacher who is in favor of strengthening public schools. It should be like how it was when we grew up. You could walk to your neighborhood school. You grew up with the people that you went to school with. As a matter of fact, some of them are supporting my candidacy. School choice should be just that. If a community does decide that they want to become a public charter, it should be up to the community to decide that. But the state should not force every district to become anything else except a traditional public school. And I do have problems and concerns with that. The good thing about, one of the things about the charter cluster district is that even though it's supposed to allow other students outside of the community to attend there. One of the problems is that for those outside of the district, once the school system decides how many students they want in a class, once they get that number and that number's full, then it's really not open to schools, to students outside of the district. So I believe in strengthening every neighborhood school so that every child can get a good education regardless of where they live. Thank you.
Let's maybe take two more and then we'll go to the second.
I just wanted to clarify, the state said that each county or district or local school board had to decide whether it was going to be ID squared, charter, or status quo. And it was not increasing class size, it was not decreasing class size, it was actually getting a waiver to increase class size, decrease seat time, and things of that nature. So it was more flexibility within that school system. And the county actually does, or the local people actually do have to vote on it.
All right.
I just wanted to, excuse me, address the one, and I'm happy to stand again, I'm sorry, just because I'm late, I apologize, forgive me. But the concerning value, basically, and methods and measures, I think that this is crucial, not that pay for performance, because teachers are on the line every day in the classroom, they're on the front line every day. So every teacher deserves far more than what they're being paid right now. So we should not be evaluated based upon how your children are performing in the classroom, because there is no way, unless you begin to do what I call pre-assess them in the beginning of the school to see where a child is, and then along the course, you actually chart out a course of plan so they can reach mastery of the skill. Now, if you want to rate teachers based upon and pay them based upon some form of method of evaluation, evaluate them based upon where that child enters into the classroom and whether that child will reach the benchmark of where the mastery is supposed to be. And second of all, let teachers teach until mastery is accomplished. Don't just go along a pacing chart and say, oh, I covered the material, and then the child goes home and can't do the work because the teacher has to move on to the next item, whatever it is. So in other words, they didn't learn how to multiply, so therefore they can't divide, but they have homework divided. We need to teach from mastery. And if you want to rate teachers on something, rate them on the mastery level which children are getting in the classroom or reaching and attaining in the classroom, not based upon evaluating somebody walking in for 10 minutes or 15 minutes and trying to rate you. I don't think that's fair. Thank you.
All right. Let's hear from Alicia Morgan. Everybody got an opportunity to introduce themselves and talk a little about their campaign, so long as that took a minute.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am Alicia Thomas Morgan, and I am happy to be here. I am a proud product of public education and a strong advocate for strengthening our schools and doing everything we can to ensure that every child in this state gets a great education. I'm a mom of a first grader in Cobb County Public Schools, and I've spent the last 12 years in the Georgia House of Representatives fighting very hard to improve our public education system. It's unacceptable to me that we have 30% of our kids in Georgia who are not graduating from high school, and that is the same here in Athens, Clarke County. It is just not acceptable. What I've learned in the legislature is that adults have a lobbyist at the Capitol, but it's time for kids to have a champion. And so I'm running for state school superintendent because I want to make sure that my daughter and your kids have access to a great education and fantastic schools in their neighborhood that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel, it's time for the second question, and Denise has not gotten a question. Teresa has not gotten a question. Rita hasn't, and Alicia hasn't. So you can decide which of those you want to. And why don't we, Abby, you want to start? Just
Ms. Forehand-Mays, there were many instances in recent history of Georgia in school shootings in Georgia schools, including one last year in an elementary school in Atlanta. There was an armed gunman in the building. As superintendent, how would you recommend schools be preparing or protecting themselves from instances of gun violence?
I'm gonna have to stand again, but I really, that's the curse in the heart, because it's not only just at the elementary school, but now also affecting colleges as well. First of all, I do believe in gun control. I do believe that a person should be tested to see whether they are of sound mind before a gun is released to them. It should be a background check before guns are released to a purchaser. I recently just won one myself. I was at some fair down in Waycross, and I was nervous. They told me to hold it, and I was shaking in my boots because I'd never held a gun before. And I'm glad of that. I'm proud of that. And they asked me, why was I afraid? And it's because there's so many killings that have happened because of that one instrument. So what I propose is that we educate our children what to do in the event of a crisis. Because the school is open to the general public. You can't stop people and parents, and we shouldn't stop parents from coming in. But I do propose also, we could take a look at it as a state superintendent, where we have every person that does enter the school, that they have to be either fingerprinted, that it should be a requirement. If they're coming to drop off deliveries, you don't know who's dropping off the deliveries and who's working. We could look at that. It might be expensive, but it might be worth it. Or where you have to register prior to coming. That means every parent, so that you get an opportunity to maybe we can have the police involved and they can just run a quick check just to see if we need to be alerted of anything. We would want to know whether some person that has a pedophile is entering into our schools around our children. Something has to be done, obviously. And we need to start with the resources we have now. Using our local police is one incident. We can have a person register and then run as they leave or before they come in, just running through the police department. Training our children is number one though. What happens in the event that you do have an intruder and it's not a fire drill or it's not a tornado drill, but we actually have where people can be placed in harm's way.
All right.
Ms. Morgan. I know your seat's still not even warm yet, but I figured I would nonetheless direct my second question to you. My first question was on the subject of parent triggers, obviously in the realm of school choice, and so my second question is in a similar vein. I don't think anybody in the room would disagree with Ms. Willis that educational freedom is a good thing, but the question here is the equitable access to educational freedom, the fact that school choice is not something that's distributed fairly across. And so the particular question is regarding the fact that at present the State Department of Education doesn't regulate, and I'm going to quote Linda Dunn from the Georgia Department of Education, who says that we don't regulate schools' scholarship organizations in any fashion. So given that the state doesn't regulate student scholarship organizations in any fashion, it's been documented that students that are already enrolled in private schools are at this point benefiting from some of the scholarships that are being awarded through these organizations. And also we have no ability to track the number of students who are switching from public to private institutions under the student scholarship program. And so I'm wondering whether and how you would assert that this particular school choice option has been successful, and whether or not you would support further regulation of the organizations by the Department of Education.
Sure. So I would start by saying that Georgia's student scholarship program leaves a lot to be desired. Last session, as I mentioned, I'm a state legislator, we passed a bill almost unanimously in the House, Democrats and Republicans, to put more reporting mechanisms and more accountability in the process. As by comparison, Florida has a much better program because number one, it's based on income, and so you're ensuring that low-income students actually have access to these scholarships. And number two, that these schools are reporting who is receiving the scholarships, how much, and so we're moving in that direction as a state. I think at the end of the day, you brought up an excellent point. It's about equity. And the truth is, those of us in this room probably have some level of school choice. And you have school choice because you have the means to move into a district with great public schools, you have the means to send your child to a private school, or you have the means otherwise to choose something that's in their best interest. And when we talk about equity, we've got to think about kids and parents who don't have access to a quality education or to the type of school that they think best meets the needs of their child. And so we have a lot of work to do in this state to level that playing field, and it's one of the reasons why I do support parents being able to have choice. As long as I'm middle class and can send my daughter to wherever I want, and in this case I send her to a great public school, I think every parent, no matter what they look like, no matter what their zip code is, should have the same kind of access. And we've got to fight, and we've got to be committed, regardless of what a child looks like or where they come from, to making sure they have a great public education.
All right, well, my question is for Mr. Lindsay. Note that there are many teachers, students, and parents here tonight and all over the state of Georgia that are very concerned about the working conditions of our state teachers and the learning conditions of our state students. With the funding cuts due to austerity and choice programs, the rise in class sizes, the heavy increase in standardized testing, and more paperwork required of the state's bureaucracy, all of which is bound to get worse with the new law requiring 50% of the teacher's evaluation to be based on their student test scores. What will you do as a state school superintendent to reverse course on these so-called reforms that are making our teachers' jobs so undesirable and more about bureaucracy than actual teaching students and changing lives?
That's a great question. My name is pronounced Robin Zine, Robin like the bird, Zine like magazine. That's okay. That's an outstanding question, and that's part of the reason why I am running for this particular seat. I'm not a politician, I'm not a bureaucrat. I'm in the classroom every day, and I understand how unfair our testing, our evaluations being tied to test scores is. I have students who don't show up until end of course testing time. We're doing end of course testing right now as a matter of fact. Some students don't test well, they don't do well under pressure. There are problems with discipline in the classroom. Teachers need support from administration as it relates to discipline. I wish I had brought one of my outdated textbooks. I don't even have enough to give to all of my students. I have to use a classroom set. In the U.S. history textbook that I use, we still have George Bush as President of the United States. In my opinion, legislation is being passed in this state to open the door for charters, the privatization of public schools. Michelle Reed's Students First organization played a lot in passing this legislation to attach our test scores to evaluation for the purpose of not only firing teachers, but determine whether or not a school is failing or not. I'm running for this seat not because I just want a position or just to win a race for the Democrats. I'm running for this seat because I understand what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I want to protect public schools. I'm the one who understands